Welcome, everyone, to another episode of IT Visionaries, and today we have a special guest. Ami Luttwak is the co-founder and CTO of Wiz. If you're not familiar with what Wiz is, it's one of the fastest growing companies, period, in software. And we're excited to have Ami on the show. It hasn't been around very long. Ami, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Really great to be here.
All right out the gate. So our audience, if they're not familiar with what Wiz is, tell us, what is Wiz and what does it do?
So Wiz is a cloud security company. We're trying to help companies with one of the most pressing and biggest problems in security today, which is how do we have the security team take control and find the critical risks in the cloud? There's so many developers developing so many great things in the cloud, but how can we make sure that everything there is actually secure?
Yeah, so to help everyone frame up what's happened at the Wiz, or Wiz, sorry. I keep saying the Wiz, by the way, because I'm going to age myself. When I was growing up, there was a retail store in America called The Wiz, and it sold like consumer electronics. It was like, people said we would go to the Wiz, but but they went out of business because they sold CDs and stuff. So, but Ami, this is really crazy for our audience who's not following the news of funding and growth of startups. I want to share this piece of information so people can get a frame and idea of what your team is doing. You've been the co-founder and CTO since January of 2020, right? You've grown. Yeah. The company has now grown to an amazing number. Recently, a big funding round just happened, $250 million raised. So a $6 billion valuation in less than 2 years. Yeah. Why? So the problem you solve, you mentioned before, how do I secure all my cloud resources, all my cloud development? Why, I'm sure a lot of our audience members understand this if they're developing the cloud, but some of our audience is still in data center. They haven't started using public clouds yet. Help them understand, why is this such a problem? So
cloud, I don't have to explain, right? Cloud is exploding. Cloud is exploding because of cloud, because it's so great, because of COVID, right? Yep. Everything is moving to the cloud. I mean, it's everything, everyone, governments, infrastructure, companies, like there is basically, banks, financials are moving to the cloud, right? Now, there is a big problem. The problem is that the cloud is great. Why is it so great? Because it's moving fast. It allows developers to build whatever they want, right? So the cloud is great because you can move so fast there.
Yeah, but take advantage of services without reinventing the wheel. You can leverage existing services very quickly. You don't need to build your own machine learning model. You can leverage some pre-existing and move on.
That's the point of the cloud. The cloud is a way for you to not do things yourself, right? That's the cloud.
Yeah.
This is really the cloud. That is the point, right? Whatever I can not do myself, I will just give it to the cloud, and I will do only what I need to do. This is why it's so amazing. This is, by the way, why a company like us can grow so fast. It would have, even from a technology perspective, to scale to the scale that we have today was not even possible a few years ago without the cloud, right? So the cloud is amazing, but there is a problem. The problem is that the cloud is you move so fast. You have so many services, right? There's so much complexity in the cloud, and security, and I would say even threats, they always come from complexity. Okay, because that's what attackers look like. They look for complexity. They like complexity. Complexity is where the attacker finds ways to go in. Now, what's happening right now is that it's exploding. The cloud is exploding. It's just exploding in organizations. And the problem is that security teams, they don't have the knowledge, the processes, the tools, the org structure to take control over this explosion. It's so different. It has no relation to on-premise data center security. It's like a new problem, completely new, and it's exploding. They don't want to stop the developers, right? They don't want to say, stop working. But also, they need to find a way to somehow make sure they're not exposed.
So give us for our audience listening, the traditional way of developing. So you had the traditional way of developing. You would set up a resource. You might build some applications. The data would move between resources, but the resources weren't connected to anywhere public facing. So you had some levels of security. With what's happening in the cloud today, the way Ami's explaining it is you have tons of services, tons of entry points. You have every developer can access its resource natively directly from. It used to be, oh, we could only allow it inside of a VPN. Now that's gone away. People are at their desks. So there's tons of entry points. It really is like a chain, right? A chain, all these different links, your application is a link. If every chain link was let's say a service or a person, it's now tons of links all interconnected. And that's what it is. And so as Ami suggested, every link is actually an entry point for, let's say, a bad actor.
So first of all, that's a great analogy. I might even use it in our pitch. Yeah, you're right. Like, again, in the past, in theory, you had a data center, you owned the data center, right? You had one entry point to the data center and you could control it, right?
Yeah, maybe a closed network. All my employees enter my closed network as a choke point. So everything moves through these two connection points and that's it.
No more choke points. There's no more control. Developers are building cities, they're building cities every day and the cities go up and down. They change, they're agile. So every day you can build a new city. How can security know if there's a way to hack into one of the buildings? It's like almost an impossible task.
Yeah, and with the movement, so the way the market's moving, right, to the tools to enable developers such as yourself, let's say like the open source dev tools that, like a HashiCorp provides, it's now even becoming more commonplace for development teams to build, let's say, even if it's a test hypothesis, right? Skunkworks project, they're going to set up their own resources. They're going to tap into data pools that might be, very important to your company. And they're able to, like you just said, build a city, spin up an application plus all its associated necessary services, spin it up, pull it down. And they're doing it. And the old way, of course, was, you had to submit like a ticket, I have to submit a ticket to IT. Like, hey, can I have storage? Like, oh, I got to provision storage. Like, this is a problem, right? That's the old way of doing it. Now I provision my own storage whenever I want to do what I need.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And also, every team wants to build in the cloud. The marketing team, they're supposed to send emails, right? Why do they have now a team of developers building their own unique algorithms for marketing, right? Like every team and every company, every business feel they need to build their unique algorithms, unique code to get advantage, and they want to do it in the cloud, obviously, right? So now it's not even it's like fully decentralized, even within the org, right? Like there's so many different teams, they all want to build in the cloud. How do I know what they're actually doing? How to make sure that they're actually protected? It's a really hard problem to solve.
All right. So we can kind of get this framework and understanding of what is happening in the modern dev workplace. So you think about the old way of doing things. If we were to use old security principles, you would have a central security team. They'd be getting tickets. They would probably be reconciling their ticket to the new resource spun up and be like, is this a resource? Is this the right person? Checking identity access. There's a lot of steps involved. It doesn't flow fast enough to support what we just described, this agile development. So now the magic question, how does Wiz help secure it all? Because that's true. These things are going to be spun up, spun down. Resource, even one of your top developers could one day log in, let's say from Tel Aviv. The next day they log in from Bali, and your tool needs to know that is the right guy, like that guy or that gal is allowed to versus is not allowed to. And so we know people are mobile, data is mobile, applications are. So how does Wiz begin to secure it all? Because that's the magic question. Because I think we've framed up the problem is clear.
Yeah. So I think. And that's the beauty. And the way we look at it is we start from a simple question that you want to answer. For example, do I have an exposed database? Right? If you look at the news, exposed database, that's like number one question.
Yeah.
The reality is that with existing tools, even answering this question, do I have an exposed database on cloud environments, especially large ones? Almost impossible. Why?
Yeah.
Maybe it's running on a VM. Maybe it's running on a container. Maybe it's a PaaS database. There's so many different types of databases. There's so many different ways to expose a database, right? It's really complex. So we thought about a way. How can we create a tool that you can deploy in minutes in the cloud native way? So no agents, just a simple hook into the environment and can answer these questions. So what Wiz is doing, Wiz is actually building, imagine an analyzer that analyzes your cloud across all of the layers, right? So we analyze exposure map, and we have a map for that. We analyze the workloads, and we go into the workloads. We analyze what they're running, right? So we build like a multi-layer map. We put it all on a graph, right? And what Wiz is basically doing is it allows you to ask these questions like, do I have a workload running a database that has some kind of exposure? And Wiz, behind the scenes, does all of the complexities. You don't need to be a cloud expert or Kubernetes expert. You can just plug it in without any kind of legacy types of deployments. There's no need for agents. It's like a single deployment with a one-click setup. And Wiz does a very deep analysis of cloud environments and just shows you, hey, this is a critical VM to fix because it's running a vulnerable Apache web server and it has an exposure through this path. And we just show it to you. And then you just go and show the developers, you have to fix this.
This is fascinating. So one of the questions that we got back in the day when I was working in software development, and some of the CIOs and CTOs that have been on the show talk about, is like, let's just start with some simple problems that make this challenging, and so that our audience can get a concept of what you're talking about. One of the challenges that they bring up is just like, I don't even know how many resources I have, right? Because of the fact that developers can spin up their own instances, cases. So You mentioned something as simple as database. Well, how many databases am I running? Most people would be like, I don't really know. Like they don't actually know. So, let's say like let's start there. How do you begin to even find all the resources? Because in order for you to see a vulnerability, you have to test all the resources. But if it's not all under one central account, which, as much as companies want to try to control this, they want to be like, hey, everything needs to be built under this account. We already know people will spin up their own accounts very quickly.
So you're right. And again, if you think about it, how many databases do I have, right? It's what we call an inventory question, right? Which databases do I have? What versions do they have? Are they exposed? These are advanced questions on the inventory. So when we look at it, we do the following. We connect into the environments, right? And then we start looking into each of the layers. A database is a concept. It can be an actual SaaS service, a service that you get from the cloud, right? So a managed database. That's one. So we check that. We have a scanner for that. It can be a database that is running on a VM, legacy database, like it's running on a cluster of VMs. So we scan the VMs themselves and we build that, right? It can be running as a container. We also scan the containers. So we basically say, forget about how it's running. You don't need to care. We understand all of the ways to run compute in the cloud. We analyze all of them and we build for you a model. And you can ask a question like a database, and we'll be connected to the database, and it will be connected to the workload running it. You don't care if it's a VM, a container, a PaaS database. We basically build one model across all of the different cloud environments that you can ask simple questions.
It sounds to me almost like I don't know, like how plumbers would die. They would dye like water, right? And so they would then pump the dyed water through a bunch of pipes. Like, well, where's the leak? You got to pump it through the pipes to get the leak a little bit.
Part of the complexity today is that it's so hard to answer because database is not defined. Like there's so many different ways to run. Like there's so many options, right?
Yeah, many options.
You need a tool that understands all of the options, can scan all of the different, like has different scanners and can build for you the simple answers. Like answering those questions is so complex because there is so many different ways to do one thing in the cloud. So either you are like the best expert in the world, or you have a tool that really analyzes and can tell you, hey, you know what? This is a database, and this is a database, and this VM is running a software that is actually a database.
So give us an idea, because the company is where it is today, but when you first started, was the decision immediately to try to check for all different types of vulnerabilities and checkpoints and security patches? Or was it like, hey, we can only focus on one thing at a time just to get this scaled up? Because the company is very young. The fact that it can change or check for all these different vulnerabilities is pretty substantial. So how did you think about going to markets like, hey, we're going to check for one type of vulnerability only to see if we can get through this? Or how did you approach this?
So I'll tell you, we started from a very basic question. It's still the question we are trying to answer until today, right? And again, I think what's astonishing is that you can ask, how is that no one answered that question before? But it is like a basic question. And the question is, how do I know if I have a risky exposure? Maybe it's an exposed database. Maybe it's a vulnerability running on some exposed code that has some exposure to the internet, right? So that was the basic question. Why is that such an interesting question? Because before us, you had vulnerability scanning tools, but they didn't understand exposure. You had configuration scanning tools, but they didn't understand workloads. So like no one was able to put everything together. Like you had a lot of legacy tools, very complex to deploy, and you couldn't also connect the dots. And our point was this: if you really want to know to do security, and you want to work with your developers, you cannot give them 100,000 tickets to solve. You really need to understand what is critical to fix today, And for that, you need to build the context. So what we've done is basically, and again, it sounds trivial, but actually it's not, because you had to rethink how to do security. It's like, let's build one tool with one connector that can understand all of the different layers, right? And this is the game changer. And we wanted to do it from day one. We started from vulnerabilities, the classic vulnerabilities. Then we added identity analysis, permissions, because, maybe it's not exposed to the internet, but it has access to an admin privileges, right? And that can take over your entire account. That's also risky, right? So we added more and more analysis of the environment, data analysis, secrets analysis, and we are adding more and more based on our threats analysis of how do attackers work.
So I want to walk back a little bit and I want to share some of your career with some of our audience, because they got to get a framework of this. You served as CTO of multiple companies, including Microsoft Cloud, Microsoft Israel R&D. So it's like, you're Microsoft Cloud Security. So very technical person, obviously an expert in many, many things. How was this question brought to you? Like this idea, how do I know I have a risky exposure? Was it a question you were already trying to answer while serving as CTO? Like who brought this question to the table and said, hey, Ami, this is what I want to solve for? Was it your idea where you were looking for other people to solve with you, or did someone bring this idea to you? Because certainly you must have felt that pain while at Microsoft, right? You must have been like, wait, I don't know what's exposed or not exposed.
So it's the beauty of ideas is that they seem trivial after the fact.
Yeah.
But before the fact, they're not trivial, right?
Right.
So, yeah. We were the team in 2012. We were a founding team that started Adalon. We were also doing security for cloud applications, right? We were doing in Microsoft cloud security. We were managing Azure security. So, yeah, we have a lot of experience. We felt something is broken. We knew something is broken, right? Because if you talk with any security team today, not even those using Wiz, in general, they tell you, again, they don't know how to distill the problem. They tell you, yes, there's so many alerts. We don't understand what to do with them. We didn't build the environment, so we don't know exactly who owns it. So you feel there is a problem. So we knew there was a problem. We didn't know exactly how to position, and that's the magic of startups.
Yeah.
We didn't know exactly the problem. Once we started working with customers, and honestly, initially, even before having a product, we started even doing going to environments of customers, right? We started with, and trying to basically doing together with them an assessment. Let's find together your critical risk manually, right? Right. Really trying to figure out. And then we understood, oh my God, this is an exposed database. And you didn't know about it. And they told us, how can we know? This tool gives us 100,000 alerts, but it doesn't understand its exposed database, right? Mm-hmm. So although it's a trivial question, the beauty of ideas and the beauty of startups is that, and I always say, it's about the team. It's not about the idea, because it's not about, hey, we woke up with the idea. No, we knew we want to do something around cloud security, but we didn't really it's only when you actually go and you try to solve it with customers, you have the moment, you say, oh my God, how did we not think about that, right? And although it sounds trivial, it's not. And before us, vulnerability scanning tools, it was a completely different market, completely different players than configuration scanning tools. It's no one actually connected the dots to say, hey, you know what? No, it's one problem. Scanning for vulnerability, understanding that this VM is exposed to the internet, it has to be together. It has to be tied up. It should not be different tools. No one ever thought about it this way.
So you guys had the experience, the technical experience to pull something off. You had done this before. You're working at Microsoft. You're working with developers constantly trying to answer this question. And it becomes this moment where you say, hey, we're actually asking the wrong question. This is the question we have to answer, which is, how do I know I have a risky exposure? And you were able to then say, if I'm answering this question, we need a tool, the product differently. All the ways the products were tooled in the past were not designed to answer this one question.
Exactly, because they were looking at siloed problems. We had like a virtual machine vulnerability scanner. You had a container security. You had cloud configuration scanner, but you didn't have a tool that tries to find critical risks, right? And then I think on our journey, what happened was that unlike Adalom, which was our first startup, we went through the Microsoft school, and the Microsoft school taught us how to scale. And when we built Adalom, it was not the way we built Wiz. We built from day one more of in the Microsoft kind of thinking. Like every feature, we think about scale from day one, which is something that usually startups never think about.
Yeah,
but if you want to be
MVP
a startup that grows fast, you have no way.
Most startups follow MVP, least viable product or minimum viable product principles, which of course does not think about scale because scale has more constraints thought of it. You're saying, hey, listen, when we approach this, we thought of it not in MVP mode, but scale mode. How does this become huge?
It's still MVP mode. That's, again,
still
it's
MVP.
A new approach. It's not. Okay, let me explain something. If you don't think about scale, in 1 year of building a startup, you can build 10 years of technical debt. 10 years, okay?
Wow.
When you build features without thinking about scale, the amount of technical debt, right? And we can probably together build like a math equation. But my point is this: what we understood is that you should not put a feature, right, that cannot scale. This is part of MVP design. It's not, if you don't think about scale, it's actually you're creating a technical debt. You will have to pay in 6 months, and if you want to grow like this, you won't be able to grow like this because you've created too much technical debt.
Okay. But it's a combination of both. It's not only MVP plus scale.
Honestly, we learned it in Microsoft. Microsoft developers always ask you before you build the feature, does it scale, right? This is an important question because especially a startup like us, we're starting from Fortune 500 companies. We're working with with Salesforce, right? Like you can't work with the scale of Salesforce if you didn't think about it from day one, right? You can't sell to big enterprises if you didn't think about it from day one. So you have to design for scale. If you're a B2B that aims to sell for big companies, you design to scale as part of the MVP.
That's awesome. One of the things you're a developer, you work with developers, you were developing this application for developers. So when you were ready to show the product to somebody, how quickly before people like your peers were like, hey, Ami, you're onto something. This works. How quickly did that happen?
Okay, so that's the beauty of a startup. Initially, our pitch was a bit different, right? Yeah. And we got responses. When we shifted the pitch to speak not only about initially we spoke also about CI/CD and it was a bit broader, right? Dev pipelines and all of that. We shifted to speak about we find the critical risks in the cloud. Boom! We were able to get customers that want to get pilots in weeks, and because we have we built it in scale, we had first customers within 2-3 months, right? First customers signing within 6 months of even starting the company. It's completely crazy. And that's why we're also right now, in terms of the fastest growing company, it is because from day one, we started building to scale.
So then that means right out the gate, also you're taking on customers within, like you said, 2 to 3 months of turning the lights on. You're taking on customers, but that means it was also working right out the gate because of course, marketing can't solve a bad product.
Our competitor told our first customer, they won't be able to scale with you, right? Yeah. And we were able to scale with them on the first pilot, and it's a huge company, right? Yeah. It's and this is the power of the cloud. And again, this is something I want to say to every startup, right? In the cloud, you don't have the luxury and you don't have the reason not to build for scale, right? The cloud allows you to build features that can scale, right? But you just need to make sure you don't build features that don't scale. Don't say, for each tenant, we'll create a new database. No, that doesn't scale for thousands of tenants, right? Yeah. But all startups do it initially, and it's a mistake.
So, the application, you overcame some FUD right out the gate. So where are you guys today? It's like, obviously the company is growing extremely fast. I'm sure there are CIOs, there's, like with everything, there's the total addressable market is unclear because the cloud market's unclear. By the way, we've had some of the sales reps of AWS as well as GCP and Microsoft on our shows, and they talk about how they think less than 20% of the world's workloads are actually in the cloud right now. So the cloud is going to more than quadruple in the next 10 years. They said in the next 10 years, easily, it's going to more than quadruple. That's how many people are coming, right? Plus, not to mention all the new applications people are developing, right? So this is not going to stop, right? So give us an idea. If there's a CIO or CTO on the fence or on the fence right now who's like, I don't know if I need this right now. Maybe they're stuck. Their mind is stuck in the old way of thinking. Hey, I need, I need a config vulnerability scanning tool. I need a, network scanning tool. I need all these different scanning tools, right? And I'm going to build an amalgamation of alerts. And basically, because by the way, we used to have that. When we were developing software, we used to have that. And it would alert so much. And I remember looking at my CTO and saying to him, like, what are you going to do about all these alerts? Like, well, I get too many. I was like, well, what if one requires your attention? He goes, well, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
That's how they approach it. It's like there's too many false positives. What would you say to like reframe their thought? If you're thinking in a traditional way because you've not seen a tool like this, how would you talk to them and say, hey, beyond the technical, like this is why you need to change the way you're thinking about this problem?
I start from the I would say the sad fact, okay? For CISOs, for security teams, the sad fact is that they don't control anymore. The developers control what's happening, right? That's the fact. If you don't find a tool and an approach that really shows that you understand, that shows the critical risks they have to fix and not give them like tens of thousands of things to fix, you basically become in many ways a person, a team that is not really helping them become more secure, right? In order for the company to become more secure, you need to have ways, you need to have tools, and by the way, it's also processes and also knowledge to pinpoint the developers on what they really have to fix. There's just no other way. If you tell them, fix all vulnerabilities, fix all of your misconfigurations, fix all of these issues, they will never actually do it. And then it's like, it's the jack of all trades. If you give them too much, they will not actually do the important things. They will miss them.
I like that. I mean, the way, like you said, that's the sad fact. You don't own development anymore. So you're in charge of protecting it, but you don't own it. So you need a tool that meets people with what they're actually doing. Exactly.
And I truly believe, and again, it doesn't have to be specifically, Wiz, but a new approach, right? This is like honestly the best return on investment you can have if you have a cloud environment. Just because it's like, and I tell companies, just deploy it and see what you get, right? If you wouldn't find like really critical things to fix, that I would be very, very surprised.
That is awesome. Ami, dude, one of the things I want to say and say thank you is the passion with which you talk is very clear. Like this is like a super passion of yours. Was it always a passion? Like this element of security, network security, cloud security, was this always a passion of yours? Or because you definitely seem very fired up at the solution, what you guys are developing, everything that's going on.
So I'll tell you, I've built a lot of security tools also within Microsoft and of course in Adalom. And I'll be very honest, a lot of security tools, the problem with them is that it's not, security is not productivity, right? It's like, it's more of you have to manage risk and you give alerts. And it's like, you never feel, like, at least like personally, that I know I'm doing a good job. You never know, right? Because Wiz is different. Like Wiz, I really believe, like, I really feel good about it because we are really giving you a good communication with your developers. Like we are showing you things you have to fix and we are really making you better. It's so much different than chasing anomaly detections. Like it's actually, I'm showing you things you have to fix. I'm helping you communicate with the developers and helping you push and transform to the new world of cloud, right? So it's like, I think the passion comes from like really feeling this is something good,
No, that is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, it's if I know exactly what you're saying. Like when you can actually see people's eyes light up, like you're making my life easier. That's good. I worked at a software startup, by the way, that was like on the infrastructure side, and nobody was happy. And not because we didn't do a good job, but we were like more like pain relief and mild pain relief. You know, setting up SDNs, networks on demand. Like they were just like, okay, it's set it up, but they weren't like happy because then that was like you said, it wasn't like a they didn't get like the pat on the back kind of thing that
Yeah, the
you're talking
customer
about.
love, when you have customer love, like there's nothing more great than this, you know, like when you feel you're actually doing like really helping them, you know,
Yeah.
that's where insecurity is rare. Honestly, it's hard. You know, when you have a firewall, you don't feel like, hey, such a great product. Here it's different.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking of all the products that we as people commonly have that we probably don't get too hyped about. Probably life insurance. I put life insurance as number one. Like you have life, you don't get psyched that you have life. You have the best life insurance. Like no one's like, I have life insurance. Yeah, whatever. Oh, I mean, it was a lot of fun having you on the show. I want to say thank you for sharing all, what you've been doing at Wiz, how fast it's growing, I love the way you explained it to our audience, which, as you said, simple when you look at it in hindsight, but before you've asked or answered the question, it's super unclear. And that was the idea that as a tech leader or an innovator, you have to actually rephrase how you approach problems entirely. Like you almost have to start over. Like whatever you think you know, change the question. Like that's whatever you think you know is the old way things are done. You actually have to do something different. I love that thought process. Ami, but before you go, it is time for the lightning round. The lightning round is brought to you by the Salesforce platform, the #1 cloud platform of digital transformation of every experience. And Ami, this is where we ask you questions outside of the world of work so that our audience can get to know you better. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So you're a developer by trade. Have you ever made something just for yourself? And what was it?
Yeah. So I'm a developer. And by the way, CTOs are always like, am I a developer? Am I still a developer? I keep asking myself. So what I'm building at home is more like a smart home kind of complete tool of basically controlling everything in the house with the doors and the windows and the cameras. So it's a lot of fun.
All right. So you're a big IoT guy. What is your favorite IoT device?
Honestly, I found there is some markets and some startups. You say, how did it not catch? But this I would say the most basic idea, taking a switch, an electricity switch, right? And changing it with a smart switch, not large infrastructure to have a smart home, just taking a simple switch and putting a smart switch that I can now communicate with any switch in my home, like from remote. It's such a simple idea. There's so many startups, but it's so hard because you need people to deploy it at homes. So I see because I'm doing software, I'm saying, wow, that's such hard startups to do. So much groundwork you have to cover, and that's why it's very hard. I'm seeing so it's amazing. I found an Israeli startup doing it, and I've have it across my home. But I'm also seeing that how hard it is for them to grow.
Listen, we had the Ring CTO, Ring cameras, security cameras, and he taught in the first versions. He says they didn't sell well because nobody wanted to drill the thing into the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not a DIY guy, like you just said. The problem with IoT hardware startups is it usually you have to install it a little bit, right? And so they talked about how they really had to answer the question: how do we make this easier to add to your door versus replace wiring and stuff like that?
These are problems I'm so happy I don't have to solve in this,
Yeah, I'll tell you what, people's behavior is notoriously hard to solve for because you probably, don't ask people what they want to do, watch what they actually do. I always joke with the examples of restaurants, right? People always say they don't like specific restaurants. I'll name McDonald's. I've never met someone who says they love McDonald's, yet every time I drive by McDonald's, the line is crazy out the door. So someone loves it.
Yeah.
So you're a tinkerer by trade. You're building your own IoT home. That sounds pretty cool. What else do you like to do for fun?
So I like traveling, hiking. So now I have 3 kids. So the trekking became a bit more backpacking is a bit harder, but we're still trying to accomplish multi-day hikes. we had a long 3 months travel to Japan, and we
Oh,
actually
that's
got to the
awesome.
newspaper. We were in the newspaper. They were so amazed to see a family with babies traveling in a mountain that we actually got to the West Japan newspaper.
That is awesome. So now I got to ask, what ages are your children? I have 3 kids myself.
Oh
Mine are
wow!
currently aged 13, 9, and 6. So they're all 3 years apart. The other 2 are about to age up. But 13, 9, and 6. How about yourself? How old are your children? Because you just said babies. This sounds really hard.
Yeah, 7, 4, and 1.
Okay, so you were backpacking with a 1-year-old.
Yeah, yeah,
And then,
yeah, yeah.
so what part of Japan were you in? Because I know parts of Japan are extremely cold. Like some of them have like, records, snowiest places on earth.
So
Of course, some are warmer climates.
we were there for 3 months, right? So we basically were across the entire Japan. This specifically was in West Japan, in the southwest.
Okay.
There was so just so you understand, like because we don't understand Japanese at all, we basically got to this special volcano, right? That was closed for 2 years, and it was opened in the day that we came there, right? And we didn't know that. Like accidentally we came there. We didn't know why there were so many people, so much excitement. And like in the hike, someone just came and took pictures of us, right? So again, that's the beauty of not understanding Japanese. Sometimes you actually get to very interesting places.
Oh yeah. Had you understood Japanese, you'd be like, let's not go there because it's gonna be closed. But then you didn't have any clue.
Exactly.
So you're backpacking the entire time. Were you working as well?
No, so it was in my time in Microsoft,
Oh,
and
okay.
there's something amazing in Microsoft. You get like 3 months when there's a new baby. Usually people stay at home, but we weren't. We took it as a trip to Japan.
Dude, that is awesome. Hey, listen, man, you're my hero because I've had babies. I don't see myself backpacking with them. So you and you and your whole family, very patient people.
I recommend. You don't have to stay
Yeah.
at home with a small baby. Why not travel?
That's true. I have noticed when I was a dad to young babies, I always thought their behavior was better outside. Like if you had them outside, they were
Yeah,
less likely to be fussy.
yeah. And they also, they sleep, they eat, they sleep, they eat. It's very good for hiking, right? Like it's fine. You walk for 3 hours and then you stop. It works well.
So what's the next big adventure you have planned? It sounds like you're an adventurer. You said hiking, backpacking. You toured Japan, which of course you've already said you didn't speak the language. You were willing to do that with young babies, so that you're a brave family soul. What's the next big adventure for you? You think?
So since we're in Wiz now, I don't have time for a long service, but we do have an interesting adventure coming. We're planning to basically relocate to New York for some time with the kids, with the family. I hope they'll actually learn English. So it's going to be a different kind of adventure, something that works within the startup
Yeah.
requirements. Also an adventure for the family as well.
Oh wow! So you moving to New York City? I'm assuming to build up Wiz North America.
Yeah, we already have a lot of let's say centers around the US, but I'm hoping to like make the New York office like a major headquarters and also get to see our employees.
That's awesome. Well, when you get here, we'll have to send you a big welcome bouquet. No one at Mission is currently stationed in New York City, but we have plenty of, we can, if you want to take a look through the previous guests, we will more than happy to introduce you to anybody you want to meet. I think you're going to it sounds like you're already accustomed to adventure. So it's going to be a lot different one, a lot less space than the outdoors of Japan, but I'm sure you'll get along just great.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm actually, let's see how we're not accustomed to the winter, in Israel, we don't have that. So we have to see
how cold does it get in the winter in Israel?
Not cold.
It doesn't get cold ever? I have no idea.
No, it doesn't cold. No, it's not cold at all. It's so we're not used to cold at all.
You're not gonna like it. You know, I can tell you, I've never met someone from a warm climate that was like, oh, this is great. If it's snowing, it'll make you feel like you're in a winter wonderland. But otherwise, if it's windy or cold, well, listen, get yourself some nice jackets. It sounds like you're about to need them.
Yeah.
Ami, thanks for joining us today on IT Visionaries. This is a lot of fun hearing your perspective on cloud security. I love what you're doing and how you approach the problem. I love the thought process behind how you even came up with the idea more than anything else, which is just fundamentally taking a problem and turning it upside down and saying, we're asking the wrong question. What's the real question we're asking? And I think that's a good exercise anyone should embark on.
I agree. It was really great to be here today. And thank you so much for inviting me.